The city shuts down. Every business gone, no supermarkets, no pharmacies, no banks, not even an internet provider. How long until daily life collapses?
Hours, James, maybe a day. We think of businesses as just making money, but they're the invisible infrastructure holding society together. And we rarely stop to consider just how deep that dependence runs.
And the reverse is just as true, isn't it? A business without society, without roads, laws, customers, employees, it's just a building. We're talking about a fundamental symbiotic relationship that underpins everything.
Exactly. Welcome to Business and Society, a subject often overlooked but absolutely crucial for anyone wanting to understand how the world truly works. I'm Oliver, and with me is James.
And it's a pleasure to explore this, Oliver, because as you've just highlighted so powerfully, the idea that business is only about making money is deeply ingrained. It's almost a knee-jerk reaction for many people.
It is, and if you asked most people, they'd probably say, well, the purpose of a company is to maximize profit. And yes, profit is essential. It's the lifeblood that allows a business to survive and grow. But it's only one part of a much larger, more intricate story. This simplistic view that profit is the sole driver and end goal overlooks so much.
Right, because if that were truly the only purpose, then logically, businesses wouldn't need to consider their customers beyond extracting money, or their employees beyond minimum wage, or governments beyond avoiding legal trouble. They certainly wouldn't worry about environmental impact or community relations.
Precisely. Yet every successful, enduring company spends significant time, resources, and strategic effort managing these very relationships. They invest in customer service, employee training, lobbying efforts, supply chain ethics, and sustainability initiatives. The fact they do this tells us something profound. Businesses do not and cannot operate in a vacuum. They are deeply embedded within society, and that societal context influences every single decision they make, from product design to marketing, from hiring practices to where they locate their factories.
So what you're really getting at here, Oliver, is that the conventional, narrow view of business, that it's just a profit-making machine, is not only incomplete but fundamentally misses how businesses actually function and succeed in the real world.
Absolutely, it's a foundational misconception. This course, BUS 3306, Business and Society, aims to dismantle that narrow perspective and replace it with a broader, more accurate understanding. Whether you want to be an entrepreneur, a manager, a consultant, or a policymaker, seeing business from this wider lens is critical. It moves beyond the simplistic accounting of profits and losses to grasp the complex web of interactions that truly define a company's existence and impact.
And that deeper understanding is vital because without it, you're missing huge parts of the picture when it comes to risk, opportunity, and long-term viability. It's about recognizing that success isn't just internal, it's relational.
Exactly, and this leads us to the heart of why businesses need society, and society needs businesses. Let's revisit that thought experiment you opened with, James, the city without businesses.
It's a truly stark image, because within hours, not days, life would become untenable for most people. Forget luxury, we're talking basic survival. Food, medicine, communication, transportation, even access to clean water and power, all dependent on businesses.
Absolutely. Think about the entire supply chain that brings food to a supermarket shelf. Farmers, logistics companies, processing plants, retailers. Remove any one of those and the shelves are empty. Healthcare? Hospitals are businesses, pharmaceutical companies are businesses. Power grids, internet service, public transport systems, these are all operated by private or state-owned enterprises functioning like businesses. Society fundamentally relies on these entities to provide goods, services, infrastructure, and employment.
It highlights that businesses are not just economic engines but critical social institutions. They shape our daily routines, our access to necessities, and our overall quality of life. Without them, there's a vacuum that no government or individual could fill.
That's one side of the coin. Now let's flip it. Imagine businesses exist, but there's no society. No customers to buy products, no employees to make them, no governments to enforce contracts, no roads to transport goods, no legal system to resolve disputes, no communities to provide a labor pool or local resources.
It's an absurd scenario, of course, because a business can't exist in a void. It needs people, rules, infrastructure. It needs the social fabric.
Precisely. Businesses need society just as much as society needs businesses. Society provides the workforce, the customers, the legal and regulatory framework, the infrastructure like roads and communication networks, the education system that trains future employees, and the cultural norms that define consumer needs and expectations. Without these foundational elements, any business, no matter how innovative or well-funded, would crumble. This isn't just about businesses needing customers, but fundamental societal structures.
So it's a dynamic two-way street. Businesses contribute and they draw upon the societal ecosystem. It's a constant interchange.
Yes, it's a truly symbiotic relationship. This mutual dependence forms the bedrock of everything we'll discuss. It means business decisions aren't isolated. They ripple through communities, economies, and even global systems. Ignoring this interconnectedness is not just naive, it's a recipe for failure in the long run.
That makes perfect sense, and the scale of this interdependence has only grown. Thinking back through history, businesses have transformed from small, localized entities to massive global players. The scale of impact has just exploded, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Hundreds of years ago, most businesses were family-owned enterprises, small workshops, or local merchants. They served their immediate communities, and their impact, while significant locally, was geographically limited. Their ethical considerations were often defined by direct personal relationships and local customs.
So, if you displeased a customer, they lived down the street. If you treated an employee poorly, everyone in the village knew about it. The social feedback loop was immediate and personal.
Exactly. But then came industrialization. Factories emerged, employing thousands. Production scaled up. Businesses started operating across regions, then countries. The personal connection diminished, and the direct line of accountability became more abstract. A decision made in a corporate office hundreds of miles away could affect the livelihoods of entire towns.
And now, with globalization and digital connectivity, we're talking about companies operating on a truly global scale. A decision made in Silicon Valley can affect factory workers in Southeast Asia, consumers in Europe, and even environmental conditions on another continent.
Precisely. Think of companies like Apple, Toyota, Coca-Cola, or Qatar Airways. These aren't just names, they are economic behemoths. They influence millions of lives daily. They create jobs, pay taxes, develop groundbreaking technology, provide essential products and services, and contribute enormously to economic growth in dozens, if not hundreds, of countries. Their reach is unparalleled in human history.
But with that enormous reach and influence comes a proportionate level of responsibility. Their decisions, as you said, aren't just about their bottom line. They can have profound impacts on the environment, public health, consumer safety, labor conditions, and even social equality across different nations and cultures.
That interconnectedness means businesses carry responsibilities that extend far beyond simply earning profits for their shareholders. Their activities in one country can literally shift economies in another, or contribute to climate change that affects everyone. This is why society's expectation of businesses has grown so much. The power they wield necessitates a broader ethical and social lens.
So, we've journeyed from understanding the fundamental interdependency of business and society through the historical evolution of how businesses have grown in scale and influence. The key takeaway here is that businesses are no longer, and perhaps never truly were, isolated profit centers, but rather deeply integrated social institutions whose actions carry immense weight globally.
Indeed, James. This growing influence directly leads us to a significant shift in societal expectations. In the past, consumers largely focused on product quality and price. If a product was good and affordable, that was often enough.
Right. You wanted a reliable car or a tasty beverage at a fair price. The how wasn't as scrutinized as the what and how much.
Exactly. But over the last few decades, that has profoundly changed. Today, many customers, particularly younger generations, are asking a whole new set of questions. It's no longer just, is this a good product, but how is this product made? Were the workers paid fairly and treated with dignity in the supply chain?
And does this company protect the environment, or is it contributing to pollution and resource depletion? Does it support local communities, or does it exploit them? Does it pay its taxes honestly, or does it use elaborate schemes to avoid its civic duty? These are much deeper, more ethical inquiries.
Absolutely. This isn't just about individual consumer preferences. It's a broader societal shift. Media scrutiny, social movements, and increased transparency through technology have empowered consumers and activists to demand more. They're looking beyond the balance sheet to a company's entire ethical footprint. So it's not just a nice-to-have anymore, it's becoming a market imperative.
So, companies that ignore these evolving expectations do so at their peril. It's no longer enough to just deliver a good product, they also need to demonstrate good corporate citizenship. Reputational damage can spread globally in minutes.
Indeed, a company might face boycotts, loss of talent, increased regulatory pressure, or investor withdrawal if they fail to meet these new standards. These questions demonstrate that modern businesses are evaluated on much more than financial performance alone. This holistic evaluation reflects a deeper understanding that a company's health is intrinsically linked to the health of the society it operates within.
And this leads us to one of the most important concepts in this entire discussion: stakeholder theory. Before we even define it, let's go back to that simple scenario you mentioned in the course overview: opening a small restaurant.
Right. Initially, you might think, my job is simple: make great food and turn a profit. That's the traditional, narrow view. But very quickly, any entrepreneur realizes that their success hinges on far more than just their culinary skills and pricing strategy.
Because your customers, for instance, expect more than just good food. They expect fair prices, a clean environment, excellent service, and perhaps even a certain ambiance. And your employees, they're not just cogs in a machine. They expect fair wages, safe working conditions, respect, and opportunities for growth within the business.
Then you have your suppliers, who expect timely payments and long-term, trustworthy business relationships. Government agencies expect compliance with a myriad of regulations: food safety, tax laws, labor laws, health codes. And your local community? They expect your restaurant to create local employment, contribute to the local economy, and certainly not cause problems like excessive noise or waste disposal issues.
And don't forget the bank that gave you the loan, expecting repayment, or any investors you might have brought in, who expect a reasonable return. Every single one of these groups has a direct interest in your business. This idea fundamentally redefines who a business is accountable to.
Exactly. And these groups are what we call stakeholders. A stakeholder is any individual, group, or organization that can affect a business or be affected by the business. This definition is deliberately broad, and it's critical. It reminds us that businesses have responsibilities towards a wide array of groups, not just their owners or shareholders. It's a radical departure from the shareholder primacy model.
But Oliver, isn't this concept a bit fuzzy? If everyone is a stakeholder, doesn't it dilute accountability? Doesn't it become difficult to pinpoint who you're really serving, beyond the owners who put up the capital? Isn't it just distracting from the core job of making money?
That's a very common and fair objection, James. The theory isn't about diluting accountability, but broadening it. It argues that by only focusing on shareholders, businesses often ignore critical groups whose support is necessary for long-term survival and success. And no, it's not just about distracting from profit. It's about recognizing that profit, in the long run, is often a result of successfully managing these diverse relationships, not the sole purpose itself. The definition isn't vague, it's inclusive, forcing businesses to consider their full impact.
So it's less about a fuzzy definition and more about a holistic one, demanding a wider perspective than what's typically taught in traditional business schools, which historically prioritized shareholder returns above almost all else.
Precisely. And to make sense of this broad definition, stakeholders are generally divided into two categories: internal and external. Internal stakeholders are those directly connected to the organization and involved in its daily operations.
So owners, shareholders, managers, and employees, these are the people who are literally inside the company or have direct financial skin in the game through ownership. They participate directly and usually have a very clear financial or professional interest in the business's success.
Correct. Their well-being is often tied directly to the company's performance through salaries, bonuses, stock options, or dividends. Their interests, while often aligned on the overall success of the company, can still vary. For instance, employees might prioritize job security and benefits, while shareholders might prioritize dividend payouts or stock appreciation.
And then we have the much larger and often more diverse group of external stakeholders. This is where it gets really broad, encompassing customers, suppliers, governments, creditors, competitors, communities, regulators, environmental organizations, and even abstract concepts like future generations.
Indeed, customers want quality products at fair prices, along with good service and privacy for their data. Suppliers want fair contracts, timely payments, and long-term stable relationships. Governments expect compliance with laws, payment of taxes, and contribution to national economic goals. Creditors, like banks, want their loans repaid with interest. Even competitors in a healthy market are stakeholders in the sense that they contribute to industry standards, innovation, and consumer choice.
The sheer range of groups you've outlined here, Oliver, highlights how many different lenses a business has to look through, and I can see how quickly their interests might diverge. It must be a constant balancing act.
It absolutely is. Think of communities that want businesses to provide employment and economic growth, but without environmental pollution or excessive noise. Or environmental organizations advocating for the protection of natural resources, which might conflict with a company's plans for expansion or resource extraction. And then there are future generations who will inherit the environmental consequences of today's business decisions, even though they aren't customers or employees today.
So this categorization helps managers organize their thinking about who they impact and who impacts them, but it also immediately brings to mind the inherent conflicts. Different stakeholders often want different things. It seems almost impossible to satisfy everyone.
You're hitting on the core challenge, James. It's true. Customers usually want lower prices, which can conflict with employees wanting higher salaries or investors wanting higher profits. Investing in cleaner technology might increase costs today, impacting short-term profits, but yield significant environmental and reputational benefits in the long term.
So it's not a matter of if there are conflicts, but how businesses navigate those conflicts. A wage increase for workers might mean less profit for shareholders or higher prices for customers. A decision to source materials ethically might increase production costs. These aren't always easy trade-offs.
They are rarely easy. One of the biggest challenges facing modern managers is precisely balancing these competing stakeholder interests. It requires not just financial acumen, but also strong ethical reasoning, negotiation skills, and a long-term strategic vision. It's about making difficult choices, knowing that satisfying one group might mean disappointing another, at least in the short term.
But if everyone wants something different, how does a manager actually decide? Is it just whoever shouts loudest, or whoever has the most power to disrupt the business?
That's the cynical view, and sometimes it feels that way. But truly successful businesses rarely focus on satisfying only one stakeholder group. Instead, they work to create long-term value across multiple stakeholder groups. This involves identifying which stakeholders are most critical to their mission, understanding their legitimate concerns, and finding creative solutions that ideally offer win-win or at least minimize loss scenarios. It requires a principled approach, not just reactive firefighting.
So this is where the real leadership challenge comes in, moving from simply identifying stakeholders to actual decision-making under pressure with multiple, often conflicting demands. It's about balancing immediate needs with long-term viability and financial goals with social responsibilities.
Exactly. This concept of balancing dynamic and often conflicting stakeholder demands highlights that effective management isn't about pleasing everyone, but about principled long-term value creation. It requires a thoughtful process of prioritization and integration, seeking solutions that strengthen the entire ecosystem a business operates within, rather than just optimizing for a single metric like quarterly profit.
And this brings us to a really powerful idea that stakeholder management isn't just about being nice or generous, it's a strategic business decision. It directly connects to long-term business success, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Let's imagine two hypothetical companies operating in the same industry. The first company focuses relentlessly, almost exclusively, on making as much profit as possible, often cutting corners. It might underpay workers, ignore safety regulations, perhaps even subtly pollute nearby rivers, and provides only adequate, sometimes poor, customer service to save costs.
So the classic caricature evil corporation that many people still imagine, maximizing shareholder value at all costs.
Precisely. Now imagine a second company in the same industry. This company also earns profits because, as we established, profit is necessary for survival. But it does so while consciously treating employees fairly, investing in their training and well-being, maintaining consistently high product quality, investing in environmental protection beyond mere compliance, and actively building positive, transparent relationships with its local communities and suppliers.
It seems obvious which one will succeed over the long term, doesn't it? The second company builds something far more resilient. But Oliver, in a truly cutthroat market, won't the profit-only company sometimes win in the short term, especially if it's ruthless and cuts corners to gain an immediate cost advantage?
That's a very valid point, James, and it does happen. Short-term gains can certainly be made by exploiting stakeholders or ignoring responsibilities. However, history is littered with examples of companies that prioritized short-term profit above all else and ultimately imploded due to scandals, boycotts, regulatory fines, or simply losing the trust of their customers and employees. Enron is a classic example. The second company, on the other hand, builds something far more sustainable. It cultivates trust, and trust becomes a powerful competitive advantage.
Trust as a competitive advantage. That's a profound statement. How exactly does that manifest?
It manifests in multiple ways. Trust attracts and retains the best talent because people want to work for an ethical company. It motivates employees to go the extra mile. It builds brand loyalty among customers who feel a connection to the company's values. It reassures investors who are increasingly looking for ESG, environmental, social, and governance factors. It strengthens relationships with governments and communities, leading to smoother operations, easier regulatory approvals, and community support in times of crisis. In today's interconnected business environment, trust has become one of the most valuable yet intangible assets a company can possess. This isn't about altruism, it's about smart long-term business strategy.
So it's not just good ethics, it's good business. It's about building a robust, resilient enterprise that can withstand shocks and adapt to changing societal demands. That second company isn't just surviving, it's thriving because it has built a foundation of trust and respect with all its key stakeholders.
Exactly. This is why stakeholder management is not simply about being kind or generous. It is a strategic business decision that underpins true enduring success in the modern economy.
It's compelling to talk about this in theory, but it's even more powerful to see it in practice. You mentioned in the course materials that there are real-world companies that successfully demonstrate this principle.
Absolutely, and these aren't just isolated cases, they represent a growing trend. Take Blue Skies Ghana, for example. Instead of simply exporting raw fruit, which is what many African countries have done for decades, they process the fruit locally. This creates value for farmers by providing a stable market and better prices. It creates local jobs in processing, and it builds a stronger local economy.
So they're not just taking resources out, they're actively investing in and building up the local community and economy. It's a win for their business and a win for Ghanaian farmers.
Precisely. Another example is Casapreco plc, a Ghanaian beverage company. They've increasingly invested in sustainability initiatives. This isn't just about PR, it strengthens their environmental responsibility, for instance through water stewardship, which in turn enhances their business reputation, improves operational efficiency, and secures their long-term license to operate in a community that cares about water resources.
That's a tangible link between environmental and business health. It shows how these initiatives aren't just costs, but investments. What about companies outside of that region?
There are many global examples. H-E-B, a grocery chain in Texas, is famous for its employee treatment and deep community involvement, especially during disasters. Ecoese, a company focusing on sustainable cleaning solutions, exemplifies how environmental innovation can also be a key differentiator and attract a loyal customer base. And then there's Patagonia, the outdoor apparel company.
Patagonia is almost legendary for its environmental activism, its ethical supply chain, and its focus on durability over disposable fashion. They actively tell customers not to buy their products if they don't need them.
Exactly, and yet they thrive. Their unwavering commitment to their values, even when it seems counterintuitive from a purely profit-driven perspective, has built an incredibly strong brand, fierce customer loyalty, and a highly motivated workforce. These companies illustrate how stakeholder-focused thinking can become an integral part of a company's long-term strategy, rather than just a short-term marketing campaign or a reactive measure to public pressure. These examples really show that it's possible to integrate these principles into the very fabric of a business model.
This has been an incredibly insightful discussion, Oliver. We've moved from challenging the foundational misconception that business is solely about profit to understanding its deep mutual dependence with society. We've explored how business influence has evolved, how societal expectations have shifted, and how the concept of stakeholder fundamentally broadens our understanding of a company's responsibilities. What's the core takeaway for someone listening who is thinking about their future in business?
The core takeaway, James, is that business is not an isolated economic activity, but an embedded social institution. True sustainable success in the 21st century demands that future leaders move beyond a narrow focus on shareholder profit to a holistic, strategic approach that creates value for all stakeholders. It's about recognizing that a healthy business needs a healthy society, and vice versa. Your ability to navigate this complex web of relationships will define your leadership and ultimately the impact you have on the world.
That's a powerful call to action. We've been discussing concepts from BUS 3306, Business and Society. Our source material for today's discussion was from the course overview and part 1 of the module provided by the course author. If this conversation resonated with you, please consider sharing this episode with someone who might also find it valuable.